I'm your city manager, Regan Wilson, and I'm pleased to welcome you to the second community meeting regarding homelessness in Turlock. As your city manager, I understand that homelessness is one of yours, if not most important concerns as a citizen in this town. I'm committed to providing you opportunities to hear from the leadership, my leadership team, who are directly involved in addressing the challenges and issues around homelessness. I've asked some of our key executives in addressing homelessness to join us this evening to present information and updates. They are as follows. Chief of Police Jason Hedden, Santa Clara County Probation Division Director Raul Dominguez, who runs the county's care team, City Attorney George Petrakis, and finally Jeffrey Lewis, President and CEO of Legacy Health Endowment. In addition to our panel members that are here to answer your questions, representatives, but we also have Ian Rodriguez, our Neighborhood Resource Officer from the Police Department. In our ongoing efforts to increase communications around this very important issue, we are developing a list of frequently asked questions, and they will be posted on the City of Turlock's website under homelessness. Everything that's asked tonight we'll get answers to, and we'll post them on the website. We have a table with speaker cards in the back if you didn't notice that. And if you want to speak, please go back and pick one up. We need your speaker cards so that we can figure out how we're going to manage the time we have together tonight. If you'd like to speak, please fill out the card, and we'll call them up one at a time. We ask you to stay within 3 minutes as we want to ensure that everyone who wants to speak has that opportunity. We also have separate cards for questions. You don't want to speak, but you'd like to have your questions addressed tonight, please fill them out, and we'll post those on the frequently asked questions website of the City of Turlock. Finally, we learned last meeting that there's been some confusion around attendance at these meetings by elected officials. I want to clarify that these meetings were created by me as the city manager, keep you informed, and receive feedback and questions from our residents. These meetings were never intended for the policymakers. These are community forums, and I apologize if there was any confusion. The policymakers will get all the frequently asked questions, and they will ultimately get a report from these meetings. And that will be presented at a city council meeting, which of course you all will be made aware of. Thank you all for your participation this evening, and now I'm going to welcome Chief Jason Hedden as our first presenter.
Thank you to everyone who came out tonight. Again, my name is Jason Hedden. I've been the police chief here for about 8 months now. I come from the city of Los Banos. I've been here in Turlock as a resident for about 17 years, and during that time I was working in Los Banos as both the police commander and the interim police chief for that city just prior to coming to Turlock. Our team is committed to lessening homelessness in Turlock, and our goal is that you walk away here tonight with answers that you didn't have before. You're going to hear me talk about staffing increases, partnerships, cleanup efforts, and information sharing in tonight's presentation. Technical difficulties here. All right, my first slide shows a breakdown of the police department's command staff. We recently, in the reorganization of the city, broke the police department up from 2 major divisions to 3 major divisions. Our newly added division is the Support Operations Division, led by Support Operations Manager Amanda Furtado. And if you see throughout the various divisions, those highlighted in blue are most affected by homelessness in our city. A typical month that I used for calls for service, we're quite a busy agency, was July of 2022. During that month, we responded to 3,399 calls for service. 712 were initiated activity by officers. That means that they went out and took the initiative to stop somebody. It wasn't something that was called in through 911 or dispatch. Of that, 645 police reports were taken and 256 arrests were made. Our population here in Turlock sits at about 71,531, and we're sitting at 86 authorized sworn police officer positions. That gives us 1.2 sworn officers per capita. This is an increase due to an estimate of population decrease by the California Department of Finance, and also an increase of authorized sworn personnel through the budget process in 2022. We were able to add 12 new positions to the police department. We're currently working on filling those positions. I'm staffed at 76 with 10 police officer vacancies. I have a support staff authorized of 52, 19 part-time employees, bringing us to a total strength of 157 allocated positions. And we're working on all kinds of recruitment efforts to better attract qualified candidates. One of those plans includes going to our police academies to take our hiring process on the road to try to save us 2 or 3 months' time and help us be competitive and get ahead of some of the other cities in the hiring process. Trends in public opinion. Turlock residents supported paying more in taxes to get the city services they wanted, according to a poll commissioned by the Turlock City Council. Overwhelmingly, the residents said the most serious issue facing Turlock at 84% was homelessness. The problem is not unique to Turlock. Everyone is frustrated and concerned with homelessness, and sometimes it can feel like nothing's being done, or that leadership doesn't care or the problem would be solved by now. But the truth of the matter is, if it was an easy problem, we would have it fixed. Another thing that I wanted to draw your attention to as I was here talking to you in this forum was crime rates, our major crimes. We account for Part 1 crimes, which include crimes like homicide, robbery, aggravated assault, burglary, larceny, motor vehicle theft, and arson. And then we have other categories that we call Part 2 crimes. Those are simple assault, forgery, embezzlement, vandalism, things like that, of that nature. Crimes overall down 1% in Turlock, but we're getting ready to shift the way that we're reporting. This is through the FBI. Traditionally, we reported through the UCR system, and we're moving to a national incident-based reporting system called NIBRS. And what that's going to do is that's going to take, instead of where we were capturing with UCR, the single highest offense, it will give us a better picture, because if there's multiple offenses created, it's going to outline each offense that was committed. I'll talk more about that at an upcoming city council meeting. We must always balance compassion with accountability when we're dealing with people who, through either mental health issues, substance abuse, or another number of other factors, have found themselves living on the streets. And we've paired with the county care team to make this marriage of enforcement and compassion and accountability. So paired with the care team, we're providing guidance and available resources, with the police department holding people accountable for their actions. And what we're finding through that is that we're seeing a lot of our homeless population are service resistant, meaning they don't want the help from us. They're not accepting the services that the care team is providing. But the police department is providing the enforcement component, and there's some things that we won't tolerate. We have zero tolerance approach towards public intoxication in open containers. Our officers have been instructed to issue citations for this type of activity. Warrants people in our parks with warrants for their arrest. The officers are out running them and taking them to jail and holding them accountable for absconding from probation, warrants, or other issues. And then we've also taken the approach of dealing with trailers, cars, and RVs. Giving multiple warnings hasn't been helping us out. It hasn't been helping us solve the problems. So we're going to take a harder crack at looking at those types of issues. We've done a number of city municipal code updates that we're looking into and researching at this time. These include restrictions on sitting and sleeping in front of businesses during specific hours of operation, restrictions on parking RVs during specific hours, and I've asked our planning department to send over plans for retail establishments for shopping carts. We've got to do something about the shopping carts around the community, so we've taken an approach at holding the establishments accountable, but also issuing citations for unauthorized removal of the carts from the store's property. These are some of our neighborhood resource officer stats. Ian Rodriguez here is our sole neighborhood resource officer. With the reorganization, the plan is to grow that program to have a strength of 4 or 5 neighborhood resource officers dedicated to the type of work that Ian is doing, centered around various community issues. But the biggest seems to be, and the biggest occupier of his time seems to be homelessness. But as you can see, him alone, his self-initiated activity is 2,116 calls for service. And there's a breakdown there of the types of calls that Ian is dealing with. 622, or 29% of his time, is spent doing extra patrols for parks or areas where we have homeless problems or issues with vagrancy. 340, or 16% of his time, is spent on issuing city ordinance violations. And you can sort of see the breakdown of what Ian's day looks like. So what I wanted to highlight with this slide is you can almost imagine what it's going to be like when we're able to staff this and grow it out to 4 resource officers for our community. These are our 2021 crime stats. During the year, there were 8,665 police reports taken. Of those, 561, or 6.5%, the person involved listed their address as either homeless or transient. During those reports, the 561, 70% were listed as the offender, 10% were listed as the victim, and 19% were witnesses or involved parties or detained on that call. And we noted that only 12 cases, or 2%, were where the victim and the offender both listed addresses as homeless. Homelessness has a tremendous impact on our community. It threatens the health and safety of the community, endangers the environment, influences the quality of life and desirability of Turlock, and it impacts our calls for service and staff time. Homelessness is one of the most challenging and complex issues we face. We're going to continue to update our website with questions as we move through identifying approaches and solutions for homelessness in Turlock. We've also created a new section on the city's webpage dedicated to homelessness. You can check that out. Our city attorney will talk about the federal court decisions that had a tremendous impact on law enforcement's ability to address a number of issues in our community. So you'll hear from him later on in the presentation about these cases. Cities across the entire United States are facing challenges associated with homelessness, and law enforcement's often front and center when we're called to help. We have to acknowledge that homelessness is an incredibly complex and expensive problem. People experiencing homelessness tend to have multiple challenges, including mental health issues, substance abuse, and addiction. And as city leaders, this is one of the most important tasks on our plate. We've done this through a lot of coordinated efforts with the city care team. This is a team of collateral assignment police officers who go out into the community and fill out contact cards and try to gain statistical data of our homeless population, age, demographics, where they're from. And then the county's care team has been a partnership. They now have office space in the police department and direct access to our staff to work through these issues. Our Turlock Public Works Department helps us with our cleanups. We coordinate with Caltrans and CHP during homeless blight work group meetings. I'm going to draw your attention to some of our large projects. March 16th, 2021, the Turlock City Council voted unanimously to ratify a proclamation of a local emergency for the unsheltered homeless encampment crisis. By March 15th through April 1st, our first operational period began. And you can see in the before and after pictures what this looked like. The location here at 1400 West Main Street was affecting local businesses. You can imagine what these encampments look like with rodent infestations, overpopulation, overbreeding of animals, and just really unclean, unhealthy conditions for anybody living there. And our goals were to reverse the trend of increasing number of unsheltered homeless and illegal encampments, connect individuals to services and family who can assist them, and stop illegal behavior. From this encampment alone, there was approximately 50 individuals moved from this private property location. This is just more pictures of what that encampment looked like before and after. What we don't want to see is large encampments, uncontrolled encampments like this popping up in our community. So we spend a significant amount of time and resources preventing this type of activity. Approximately 75 individuals were moved from the private property location with prior authorization from the property owner at the West Glenwood Avenue location. That operational period was April 2nd through April 15th. And if anyone can remember what this looks like. This is just more before and after pictures. This one happens to be Taylor Road. This is another project, our South First Street project, before and after. Golden State Boulevard, if you can remember what that looked like. Some of our weekly projects include weekly cleanups coordinated, I talked about with the Public Works Department. Every Friday, our neighborhood resource officer and code enforcement now partner with maintenance workers to clean up various locations in the city. And code enforcement now coming onto the police department helps strengthen that and add to our cleanup efforts. On a daily basis, our officers are contacting individuals and posting notices regarding illegal storage of property in parks, sidewalks, and behind businesses. This picture here isn't meant to capture what Denair Park or Broadway Park looks like. I'm talking specifically about the posting of property and cleanup efforts of the NROs. Our parks are serviced daily at Broadway Park, Central Park, and Denair Park, and all other parks are serviced by staff for cleanups Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I'll turn it over to Raul Dominguez.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Raul Dominguez. I am the manager over our care team. So just to give you a little bit of overview what our care team is, the care team has been established through the county to address individuals, homeless individuals who are mostly in distress for themselves, due to mental illness, substance use disorder, and by being in that distress, they cause distress to the community. So which means they're getting called out. The police are being called out to them on numerous occasions for issues such as having a mental breakdown out in the community, or trespassing, illegal camping, a lot of the quality of life issues that we've been dealing with or we're talking about today. So we've partnered up with the city of Turlock and the Turlock Police Department for them to send us referrals. So what they do, we're data driven. So they look at which homeless individuals are receiving the most calls for service in the community, and as they establish this list, they're referred over to the care team. So the goal of the care team is to reduce those calls for service. So as we were talking about earlier with Chief Hedden, if we can reduce some of the calls for service that they're using up those resources, then the police can address other issues within the community. We started working here with Turlock end of 2021, beginning of 2022. We started collecting a lot of the data, receiving referrals from them, and then addressing the homeless clientele out here in the city. So in May of 2022, we were seeing an increase of referrals to our team. So we created a team just for Turlock, which consists of a behavioral health specialist, who is someone from the behavioral health department who provides case management and linkage to services for these individuals. We have a public health nurse who provides linkage to medical services. And then we have a peer navigator, who is someone who has lived experience with homelessness or some type of lived experience with what the clients that we're dealing with have dealt with in the past. So try to navigate the system and help them to the resources that they need. And in doing that, the main goal of the team is to reduce calls for services and reduce arrest of these individuals. With doing that, the plan is to have less 5150 calls and less tying up less services from your police department. So this is an event that we had here in Turlock at the Turlock Gospel Mission. We had a pop-up event where we provide numerous services to homeless individuals. We had vaccinations, COVID vaccinations there. We had haircuts. We had mental health services. And these are just kind of give a quick breakdown of some of the services we provided on that day. So we had 100 participants show up. We had 20 substance use referrals. So that means that 20 people came in and decided to have an appointment or have a mental health assessment, substance use assessment completed. 25 had mental health assessments either completed or scheduled. And then 21, we assisted them with vital documents. So one of the things that's important about vital documents is for housing. So when an individual wants to get into housing, they have to provide vital documents, which would be a birth certificate, social security cards, or an ID. And then out of those individuals, we also had 35 medical referrals. So what we've noticed as the care team is we've noticed that some of our biggest services that are being used by our homeless individuals or clients in the community are medical services and mental health services. With that, we try to provide those services either through transportation or linkage, which means we try to link them to a treatment provider. One of the main things we do as a team is provide a mental health assessment. So we have mental health clinicians also on the team who can provide on-the-spot services to our clients. And where this is a little bit different than anything else is we provide the services to the individuals in the community. So they do not have to come into an appointment or make an appointment to come see us. As we start contacting individuals, we start providing those services to them right where they are. So if that's under a bridge, down by the river, out in an encampment, we provide those services to try to reduce some of those barriers and try to get them into the, I think it's just changing myself. And try to get them into the services that they need. So, as I said a little bit earlier, our main goals are to reduce arrests and calls for service, and at the same time stabilize individuals' mental health and substance use issues. So these are some of the stats that we have for the city of Turlock. Total stats for since the beginning of the year, we've had 1,193 individual contacts. So that means at every contact that we've had with someone, we provided some type of service, whether it was transportation to their doctor, maybe taking them to get their medication from the pharmacy, or helping them receive some of the paperwork that they need to be housed. 221 of those individuals were non-care clients. So what I mean by that is those are 221 individuals that were not referred to us by the city of Turlock. That means they're not some of the ones that are the highest utilizers of services. One thing that we notice as we start addressing issues in the community, that our care clients, they have their own community. The homeless community is a community of itself. And in order to help one person out of homelessness, sometimes you have to help their significant other, whether it's a family member or a boyfriend, girlfriend, or sometimes just they build their own group of maybe 3 or 4 people who've been homeless for so long that they build a relationship as a family together. Out of our average contacts currently for the city of Turlock are about 150 contacts per month. So that's with the 3 members that we have on the team.
One of the most important things for me is to get out and really understand the problem. Going out to our parks and really just being able to understand what the homeless issue looks like in Turlock. Events like this provide us an opportunity to hear from the public, and it's important to us. Some of the other programs that the police department has are listed here. I hold a series of meet and greet events. Many of you have come down and talked to me and expressed issues or concerns in your neighborhood. And all of these programs offer an opportunity for that, a connection for the police department and me to the community, so that you can express what concerns you have individually, because they're different for all of us. I want to talk a little bit about business safety and our Business Watch program. If you're a business owner out there, our Business Watch program is available through the Crime Prevention Unit. This provides resources and ways for businesses to partner with the police department and each other. We want our businesses to know and our community to know that they are safe in the downtown area. We want to talk about some of the extra enforcement that we do with bike patrols and having overtime officers staffed down there, so that there's a visual presence and the community can see that we're out there among them and that it is a safe environment to enjoy. Our patrol teams have all been assigned to various districts throughout the town, including downtown and our parks. I talked about expanding the Neighborhood Resource Officer program, and code enforcement and NROs working together are improving quality of life issues in Turlock. And I know it seems like a slow process, but we're doing our best to get these people staffed up and hired so that you see the results of our efforts. It's just some of the Business Watch decals that we have. We have street signs available and decals you can display in the window of your businesses. So again, if you're interested, the number's listed there. Contact the Crime Prevention Unit or visit us on our police department website for more information. That concludes my presentation. We'll switch to the next presentation and we'll answer questions here at the end.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. It's great to see it. As I said at the last meeting, it's important for us to hear from the community, which is in addition to us providing some information to you. That's the main purpose of these, and I expect another great meeting tonight. So I thank you for attending. So my presentation, I'm trying to gauge how many people were here last time versus how many people, this is the first meeting they've come to. Okay, well, that's enough for me to be somewhat repetitive. So those of you that have attended both meetings, I'll beg your forgiveness while we go through it a little bit. What I've heard your city council, your mayor and city council say when it comes to homelessness is that they're pleased to help coordinate the many resources available to help those in need who want help and will accept help, but they also want to maintain your local community standards, which are largely reflected in your municipal code, which is your local laws. And so that's what I've understood it to be, and I repeat that from time to time, and nobody has corrected me, so unless somebody corrects me, I'm going to take that as the goal of your council. So I was thinking about our meeting last time, and so I would start a little differently. So when it gets to the city attorney's office, how does a city attorney look at these things? Well, you have the goal in mind, which is articulated by the people I work for. I work for you through them, the five who hire and fire my position. And so it's really largely a presentation of a legal risk analysis, both to the elected officials and to the city staff about different policies they might want to employ to achieve the larger policy goal. And so that a risk analysis really has, I'm simplifying, but really it has two components. It's sort of what is the state of your local laws that might affect this process and the policy goal, and then what are the local facts surrounding those local laws, and kind of translating that to the many mostly federal cases that are out there on the many challenges brought to local communities when they want to try to chart their own future on such an issue. And then you try to present the decision makers with the risk of this policy or that policy. In the Turlock case, for example, when I got here last year, really a lot of communities had frozen up any sort of enforcement, especially on encampments. And we were able to develop a way last year that kind of went through the legal maze and allowed the encampments issue and the public safety and health and safety concerns to be addressed. So I say that to give everyone some hope. It's not impossible, it's just really hard to do. And so that's what you go, and if you make a wrong step, that's the problem. If you are a little too aggressive and you get sued and you lose, the net result of losing is that primarily what happens in these cases is cities are forced, it might be too strong a word, but cities end up settling those cases for millions of dollars spent on policy priorities that I would say probably most of you in this room wouldn't agree to, but you've got to do it because it was a settlement of a suit to, end the lawsuit, and that's pretty common in California. So that's kind of how a city attorney at least starts looking at it. And initially, the problem really, if you think about it, it's everything we talk about, or everything you see and you think is the challenge with homelessness, the effects on the community of homelessness, it's really a factor of public property, right? Most of these cases are about what people can or cannot do on public property, and what can or cannot a city regulate by way of people's conduct on public property. The encampments last year largely were on private property or Caltrans property or railroad property. So those frankly are a little easier to navigate than city-owned property or county-owned property. So that was part of last year's factor, but is obvious if you're around town. I think that because the encampment challenge has been removed and the public health and safety challenge of some of those really terrible conditions you saw in the photographs, the homelessness has been dispersed throughout the community where many people see it. So in some sense, it's more visible. It's also compounded, as it's no secret, right, by issues of addiction, alcoholism, and mental health. So there is a core issue there that's very hard to get at with any meaningful success. And so I think you always need to keep that in mind, because when you're before the federal judges, they certainly keep that in mind. A third thing I realized after the last meeting was by training, I basically for 30 years, 29 years before I became your city attorney last year on an interim and then a non-interim basis, which means I get to work until 3 of them fire me. So it's really, really a great, your city manager likes to say that he works from week to week if 3 of his people agree with what he's doing. So in my land use practice for many decades, planning and land use was an interesting area of law. I liked it. But in the 30 years that I've done that, would anybody in the room say that we've solved the housing affordability crisis in California with land use law or planning law or environmental laws that you apply to local land use? I think the answer is no. We have an affordability crisis, and the legislature goes, in knots and tries to undo the damage already done to the housing market by passing more and more laws, and there are more and more lawsuits as you try to navigate it. So what I saw in planning and land use is it was an area of the law subject to fads. Everybody thought they had the silver bullet, and this was going to solve this problem, and this was going to solve that problem. It's hard for me to think of any of those fads that ended up working as intended. The law of unintended consequences comes into play, and it's just very hard. And so now, you've got one of the greatest pieces of real estate in the world in California, and we have a completely distorted, screwed up land market where you can't even, people with, normal people with normal jobs have a hard time, affording housing. Well, I will say, in the much less time that I've been dealing with sort of homelessness law, it too seems to be subject to fads. So it makes it really hard to get to the nub of the problem, which I think probably everybody in this room expects, which is you all work for us, the taxpayers, and I saw Councilmember Franco's here. We vote for you. This is what we want. Why aren't you doing it? Well, I would say one of the problems is this is an area subject to ideas and fads, and everybody's got the way they're going to solve it, and I don't think anybody really has found a silver bullet to solve it. So what are who are the challenges we face? Because believe me, everybody up here would love to solve the problem for everybody, for everybody in the room, for business owners, for property owners, for homeowners, for residents, and also for the homeless. It's very hard to do, in my, I have strong opinions at doing this job at my age, which is, these things just don't happen. The fact that a local community has difficulty charting its own course that it wants to do in handling an issue like homelessness doesn't just happen. It happens because millions and millions of dollars are spent to make it happen. In our case, it's spent through and by the National Homelessness Law Center, which is a non-governmental organization in Washington, D.C. And, you know, to be a lawyer for them would be a lot of fun because you get to sit around and come up with new and innumerable theories on how to sue cities and counties when the approach a community wants to take isn't to their liking. And I made a joke about this blue binder in front of me at the last meeting. That is literally, except for 2 reports from the California League of Cities, that binder is full of reports and case summaries of this group and the legal theories they use to make sure that we up here can't do very much. And, you know, they're not 100% successful, but they are largely successful. I won't bore. Last time I read some of the major law firms and corporations that support this and other non-governmental organizations. So I'll just, you know, Sullivan and Cromwell, big law firm, Covington and Burling, big law firm, Lathan and Watkins, big law firm, Microsoft Corporation, Bank of America, American Red Cross, all those are entities that have board members that are boards of director on this group. So that's how a lot of local policy is now driven by groups like this that have a single focus, in this case, homelessness law. And what they want to do is they want to prevent what they call the criminalization of homelessness. So I almost guarantee you, not for our repeat customers tonight, but for those first-time customers here at the meeting, everything that you would consider common sense of how to address this problem, I would say, I would be surprised if anybody came up with a theory that hasn't been tested in court already, and better than even chance that the city or the other local jurisdiction has lost that case. So these are the people who do it, and they do it not, you know, they don't come before you for a vote. They do it in federal court, federal district judges and court of appeal judges, and that's how that whole system works. So when you're the city attorney, again, it's not impossible. It just takes, you know, takes a lot of thought, and you have to be careful, and you have to weave your way through it. But it's difficult, and what it did, the city of Boise case, probably a number of you have heard about, that really did freeze up local enforcement of local ordinances for a number of years, and some communities still won't enforce it. So what are the kinds of areas that they have addressed and lawsuits have been filed on? Well, there have been challenges to bans on camping and sleeping in public. There have been challenges to restrictions on living in vehicles, prohibitions on the bans of loitering, loafing, and vagrancy, prohibitions on sitting or lying down in public, prohibitions or restrictions on panhandling. It goes on and on. Now, you know, and they're always developing new theories that make it, you know, especially interesting to have responsibility for navigating all this. Like one of the current fads legal theories is something called the state-created danger theory that cities are starting to see. And that means if the state, and we say state here, meaning local government, if local government in the enforcement of their local ordinances, like for example, something that you all probably would think would be very reasonable, that if somebody wants to camp in a local park and it's raining outside, you would still think maybe that to prevent the homelessness and the adverse effect on the park, that the city ought to be able to remove that tent, say if it's a tent. Well, not if it's raining or snowing, because then the state has created a danger to that homeless person that has nowhere else to go, right? So that's kind of the newest line of cases. They must have heard me in Washington, D.C. saying bad things about them. So to give you some sense of it, since 2015, 100% of the lawsuits challenging panhandling bans have been successful. 77% of the cases challenging loitering, loafing, and vagrancy bans have been successful. 60% of the cases challenging camping bans and sweeps of encampments has been successful. Let me give you an example on the panhandling. That's something most people think should be the local government should be able to regulate. Well, since 2015, the United States Supreme Court, not the Ninth Circuit, the very, which some people consider, out of the mainstream, said that speech regulation is content-based when the ordinance draws regulatory distinctions based on the message a speaker conveys. So what that means is you can only regulate panhandling the way you would regulate any other speech. You can't pick out panhandling and say we're just going to regulate that, because then the United States Supreme Court has said that's an unreasonable regulation of speech that is not content neutral. So that's what we face, and it's like I said, it's not. I realized last time I was very depressing. I think I left the room with no hope that anything could be done. That isn't true, but it is. I'm going to say it for the 8th time. It's challenging. So the other one that came up at the last meeting that I know there's a lot of impact on is the impact on the parks and parking around, the oversized vehicles, RVs and stuff around the parks. So I went back through these materials since the last meeting and sort of thought about it and saw what the evolution was. Well, really, if you look back 5 years ago and the report about 5 years ago, challenges to those kind of things, it was more of a theory. There wasn't a lot of litigation on it, but in their 2022 update to the materials, there's been a lot of litigation just on that issue, on regulating the oversized vehicles or RVs and that sort of thing. So again, it's not, you read the cases or the case summaries, and you can get through it. So let me give you a simple example, right? And this is why we're engaged in this major project of updating our ordinances. If you have an ordinance that just sort of banned RV parking, it's probably going to be found too vague, and one or another, it's going to fail somehow. However, maybe in First Amendment you've heard that the state can regulate, or local governments can regulate time, place, and manner, meaning when it's not content-based, if it's sort of neutral, you can regulate. Well, there's kind of a similar trend here. If you have a requirement that you can't park on the public streets between midnight and 6 a.m., that's more likely to pass legal muster, right? And so that's how you might want to approach that issue. So you can get through it. You can make it. You can do. There are things you can do, and we're doing those. And they're. So I'm not gonna ask for patience, because you've all been very patient, but we're getting there like we did on the encampments. But it's a tough job. I'm not going to go through the Boise case like I did last time. I think that became a little too. I had nightmares about being back in law school, but I'll say that froze up the enforcement, because basically the issue in that case was the city of Boise, Idaho had what many people would think was a kind of a pretty common sense approach, which is they enforced their local ordinances, in this case mostly a camping ban, right, a ban on camping in public, so long as they had room at their local emergency shelters. If there was room at the shelter, the police department would enforce the ban, and the protocol was if they didn't have room at the shelter, they would not enforce the ban. Now, that case is disturbing because you get into this long analysis of, I call it, when is a shelter bed not a shelter bed? And the case is terrible from my point of view, or from the city attorney's point of view, because it lays out the next 8 or 10 theories of how to do the next lawsuit, right, to kind of attack. Because what came out of Boise is you have to, if you want to enforce your local ordinances, you have to have a shelter bed for everybody who's homeless. That's not exactly right, but good enough for tonight's purposes. But then it started attacking what is a shelter bed. if the shelter was explicitly religious-based or Christian-based. Well, maybe that's not a shelter bed, you know, if they force this or force that. If you try to impose rules like you have to be here by 8 o'clock to secure a bed, and if you came in there after 8 and you didn't get the bed, well, maybe there's not a shelter bed available, right? So it really just undercut, you know, it just went through and undercut everything. But even that, you know, which was a pretty, pretty aggressive case from a local city point of view. There are ways through that, but part of the ways through that involve and how your local shelters operate and what other resources you bring to bear. Because certainly, I think you all know by now, I mean, there is an enormous amount of resources and money, not really city money for the most part, but through the federal and state and county governments, there's an enormous amount of money. Money isn't the issue really on this. It's really how you deploy the funds that matters, because the facts on the ground, remember where I started, that you have to look at the local ordinances. You could have the best ordinances in the world that are all set up to survive legal challenge, but if your facts on the ground don't provide the environment in which the federal judge is inclined to agree with you and allow enforcement, well, then you're still going to probably have a problem. And so I'm going to end my comments there, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Lewis, who has some, I think will impress you with some interesting approaches.
Good evening, and yes, I'm the guy with the PowerPoint, so bear with me. But the idea tonight is I'm president and CEO of Legacy Health Endowment. We were responsible in about 2019 for writing a report for the City Council on homelessness in the area, where we said that the city didn't have a crisis, but it had a problem. 2022, the city still has a problem, it's not a crisis. But in the interim, challenges that the community faces today are similar to what we faced in 2019. Solutions, collaboration. So they asked me to sit down and come up with some ideas, and my presentation tonight is going to be about those themes: solutions, collaboration, reaching consensus that is unable to be reached at the current time. And as George referred to earlier, that with all the legal cases that are taking place, the city's hands are often tied in terms of what they can and cannot do. But in the meantime, despite the handcuffs that might be on city officials and elected officials, I'm the guy that looks at the cup as more than half full. What can we do? How can we do it? And how do we begin doing it now? Not tomorrow, but now. Always focused on the human face. That human face could be me, it could be you, it could be a woman with a child. So as we talk about homelessness, I'm talking about the complete homeless population, but I'm singularly focused on those families who I worry about every day. Where do those kids go? How do those kids get fed? What happens to the wife? Is there domestic abuse? How do we put those programs together to make it seamless so they can get access to services? 2019, we defined the major problem in the city as homeless organizations that were not collaborating. They would talk about these things, but ultimately we had 4 or 5 different silos. One organization that I would say, was always there to do something was United Samaritans Foundation. They feed people every day. They don't look at who they are, where they live, or how they sleep. They feed them, they take care of them, they nourish their soul, and in the process they nourish their minds. And we've got the Salvation Army, who's doing housing programs and senior citizen housing. But United Samaritans Foundation is the one feeding the people at Salvation Army. The Gospel Mission has a brand new kitchen. One of our foundations paid for that kitchen. Is it being used? I couldn't tell you today if it's being used. Is it being used daily? I suspect not. So you will find that I am very direct and outspoken and frustrated. So that's why I decided to join the effort, because it is time for collaboration, and we're going to propose a way to do that. We're going to overcome the silo mentality, as I refer to it. It's time to have a convening authority. I propose to the city manager and will propose to the city council that Legacy Health Endowment be granted the authority to be the convening authority. Allow us to bring the homeless organizations together at the table. Have a conversation to see who's willing to talk, who's willing to collaborate, and who's not. And in the process, let's determine how those public funds that they're receiving are being spent. Let's go towards transparency to help the public understand how much public money are the organizations receiving and how are they spent. Now, I could say to you today, the United Samaritans Foundation probably spends 80 cents of every dollar on individuals, probably 85 cents on every dollar on food. My numbers are correct. Now, that ROI is phenomenal. I can't tell you what the other organizations do. I should be able to, but I don't have the data. I don't have access to it. If you give us the convening authority to bring the organizations together to eliminate the silo mentality, we will begin to come forth with a strategy to say to the community, here's how your tax dollars are being spent. Here's where they're being spent, and how we could change the status quo and make it more effective. The key is going to be collaboration. But as part of the collaboration, you also have to be recognized that there has to be a hammer and a carrot. The carrot is being at the table. The hammer is, if you're not going to collaborate, I will recommend that you get cut off from public funds. If you are going to collaborate, we're going to help you find more public funds or government money, whether it's state, federal, or local. That hasn't taken place. That's not the role of government. That is the role of a nonprofit, to say to other nonprofits, it's enough. We have to collaborate. We have to work together. We give away $2 to $4 million a year in charitable grants to healthcare entities, including the United Samaritans Foundation, because food to me is healthcare. Now, you leverage those dollars like venture capital. We invest in people, we invest in programs. And in doing that, you can change the status quo. It doesn't happen quickly, but we're making progress and making changes. Key to addressing the homelessness problem all right. Sorry, I'm not good with a clicker. Transparency, as I referred to it earlier. I should give you. Let me introduce you to my colleague, Allison Jeffrey. Transparency has been missing for years in government. Not just city government, it's government generally. And when you look at how much money is allegedly being allocated to these problems, it's time to say, let's redefine what transparency is. Let's make sure we educate the public about public dollars, regardless if they're marijuana dollars or if they're other measure dollars. Let's understand what is available and how it's being spent. Most importantly, to educate the public, the Turlock taxpayer, about what's going on with the money. Where a homeless organization receives public funds from or through the city, our requirement will be that they must submit quarterly reports to the convening authority. Now, that's not a new report. That is a new report on existing funds, not to duplicate reports, but to say, all right, let's start a new process. Let's figure it out. We got the organizations at the table. Let's figure out a form. Let's figure out how to do this. So everybody's data comes in. Hammer on this approach is, if you don't turn your data in on time, we come back to the city to say, this organization is 6 weeks late. No one should be 6 weeks late. If you're staff deprived, then you speak up immediately and say, I'm staff deprived, I need help, and how do I do this? There are plenty of volunteers out there who will come and help you do this. When they don't do that, and there's no consequences, as there has been today, these kinds of things happen. I wrote the slide about homeless organizations caring for and what taxpayers deserve to know. To me, it's common sense. You deserve to know who are the homeless. Are they people who grew up in Turlock? Do they grow up in Stanislaus County? Or where are they from? Let's build a database. Let's figure out how many people have come here, where they've come from, and why. Are the homeless organizations serving the same people every day? We Care, which is a wonderful shelter program, 49 beds. How many people are they serving every day? Are they serving the same people every day? As the weather gets colder, is it more difficult for people to get one of those beds? And how do we work around that? You don't penalize We Care for what they do. You embrace them, and you figure out how to help them. One of the first things we could do, and I'm sitting next to the city manager, is if we could get the city planning office to finish the plans and approve the plans that We Care has in place, they could expand what they're doing, and they'd have their facility would be updated because it's with city dollars. But I digress. Homeless organizations offer free housing. We Care, gospel mission. Are they caring for the same people? Let's figure that out. Which organizations are helping homeless families? We always talk about the homeless. I'm going to change the conversation to homeless families. Whether it's one person, two people, whatever that family unit is. How do we help that family? Most importantly, how do we help that mother with a child or children? Can she go into an existing homeless shelter? What if she has a teenage son or daughter? And We Care might have a pedophile staying there overnight. Can that son stay in a place like that? Is it safe? No, it's not safe. We should never endanger any child like that, regardless of their age. So how do we begin to deal with those challenges that we've really not addressed before? Feeding the homeless. As I said earlier, United Samaritans Foundation is the key to this solution. Work that they've done is phenomenal. That's all I can say. It is state of the art in terms of what they've accomplished. There is no CEO in America who can squeeze more sauce out of a dollar than Linda Murphy Julian. She's masterful at it, but she can't do it alone. She has trucks that are on the blocks because they're waiting for things to come in. They're challenged every day in terms of feeding people. Her numbers are growing in terms of serving more Turlock residents, Ceres residents. But in the process of serving those people, she's now discovering that we have more unserved seniors, people over 65 who are food deprived, who are lower income, who aren't connected with their Medi-Cal managed care program, who haven't been connected with other programs. So hopefully in next few weeks, we'll come back to Linda with some good news about something Legacy Health Endowment's going to propose, and we'll be able to address that. Westside Ministries does a masterful job on the West Side in terms of making sure an after-school program, children are fed. Dr. Garraza does just an amazing job in terms of programs and feeding those kids, as well as feeding other people who many people would just ignore. Add a consolidated citywide strategy on feeding run through United Samaritans Foundation. So the convening authority has already started. We're going to put the United Samaritans Foundation here. They've got a phenomenal kitchen. Let's figure out a way to strengthen what they do, how they do it, their distribution system, so we can serve more people. And while we can say to the public, here's where your dollar goes. Every $10 that you contribute to United Samaritans Foundation creates this many meals. Now imagine that you'll know what that numeral, that ROI is. It's an easy thing to figure out. We'll assist her in figuring that out. But in the process, what you're doing is you're not only feeding people, you're helping them survive the challenges we face every day. Salvation Army uses United Samaritans Foundation. The Gospel Mission does what the Gospel Mission does. I'm never quite sure what they're doing, but I know they're supposed to be doing something. Centralized feeding program will be a solution that this community should be able to embrace. It will be successful, and it's my reputation if it's not successful and I don't fail. Because I have a partner in Linda Murphy Julian, they have the Rogers family behind them, and I suspect that the city council and maybe the county supervisors will look at this as a unique project to do something that's not been done before. And we have the police force who can identify more people who are in need of food. When you have that kind of collaboration, which we have today, working together, we have a hell of a great team. I mean, I can't say enough about Jason and his team. It's the first time I had a police chief that I can say it's a friend who cares about this community. And these two guys, what they do every day is just monumental. They do in terms of trying to keep people's lives together is never said thank you enough. Never enough. Do is amazing. Our goal is to also look at other resources. HealthNet is a Medicaid managed care provider that has a contract for Stanislaus County. They advertise talking about they've got food pharmacies, including support for community organizations. They provide medically tailored meals. They have food RX programs. But I don't think they've ever connected with United Samaritans Foundation. In fact, I know they haven't. So, I'll be having conversations with HealthNet, who just won a new county contract, to do this, to say, well, how do we leverage this more effectively in Stanislaus County? How do we, in Turlock, not Modesto, in Turlock, leverage these programs and effectively benefit the citizens of our community? Let me take you to housing because it's always a hot topic. Op-ed I wrote a few months ago talked about creating 40 units. I'm never quite sure what the right terminology is for this. But there's technology out there today where you can think of it as semi-trucks that come together to create 40 housing units. That's the worst way to describe it. But they're 40 housing units for individuals. We need those in Turlock. We have to figure out a way to start a plan to start somewhere. Let's start with 40 units. We have to have an entity that's going to manage those units. It has to be a full-time entity. Perhaps one of the religious organizations would take responsibility for that. But there's always a catch. There's always a hammer to what I'm going to suggest. It's great to have housing, and we have homeless people who want that housing. But we also have to put the hammer in place and be honest about it. If you want housing, let's talk about drugs. Let's talk about alcohol. Let's talk about substance abuse. Let's talk about getting clean. Let's talk about testing. These are not topics people like to talk about, but I'm not a politician. I'm just a guy up here trying to solve a problem. But I'm trying to be honest with you because if we're going to help that individual get housing, let's help them get clean in whatever way it takes to get there and help them do that. But in the process of those 40 units, we also have to protect families. We have a number of women who are homeless because of domestic violence. It hasn't changed in this county. It's grown exponentially. The Haven program that exists does one hell of a job. If you've never seen what they do, I suggest you look at what they do in Turlock. You can't find them because they don't want an address for some spouse that might find them, or a boyfriend or a girlfriend. But the work that Haven has done and continues to do, second to none. Marry those programs together with 40 housing units and we have a beginning. It's not the end. It's not panacea. You have to start somewhere, but it's a good place to start. City manager is a great advocate and collaborator. We put an RFP out for the city for mobile health services at my recommendation, and he seconded it without any hesitation. The city council voted 5-0. Nobody responded to the RFP, so now we're reworking it, and hopefully within the next few weeks, right, Mr. City Attorney, we'll have a proposal in place, and there'll be mobile services available for healthcare. They'll be designated in 5 or 6 spots. Allie Jeffrey, my colleague, is working with us on this, and each week someone will know. At United Samaritans on Monday this week, next week at this place, next week at this place, and the public will know where to go for those services. Are they free? Absolutely. This provider will get a grant. If you can't afford the services, they're provided for free. If you need medication and you can't afford your medication, the medication is free as well. We use one pharmacy in town called Tin RX. So located inside the Romeo Tower parking lot, and they're our partner in the process. But when we talk about healthcare, one of the things that we have to remind the public about is the fact that we have existing providers here. Golden Valley Health Centers has a facility on West Main and on Monte Vista. If you're uninsured, you walk in and you might sit for a few hours, but you'll be seen. Livingston Community Health has a place on Delbach, right around the block from the hospital. Same thing, if you can't get an appointment, walk in, sit down, and someone will see you. If you don't get seen, you call us and we'll assist you in finding you assistance. But you use existing providers. The convening of this says, let's centralize this in a way that makes sense, that helps the community get access to services that they need and most importantly, that they deserve. Mental health services are never enough. We don't have enough providers in America, let alone California, let alone in Stanislaus County. A few years ago, we launched the first behavioral health urgent care center because of our concern that children and adults couldn't get access to mental health services. Today, they are in year three. We've just merged them with another organization from the Bay Area called La Familia. They're still working out of here. They're a bigger organization now. With our assistance, they just won another $1 million federal grant to serve more people. They're working in Turlock, they're working in Gustine. If you know of people who are seeking services and they can't find it, you call my phone number or you call Allie's phone number. We'll give you the first behavioral health number and you call them to get an appointment. If it doesn't work, you call us back and we'll find you another provider. But at the same time, Golden Valley provides mental health services. Livingston Community Health provides mental health services. They don't necessarily talk about them. The public may not know about them as much as they could. That's not a fault, but let's make sure that more people know what exists. To address the underlying challenges of the workforce for the homeless, we also have to leverage existing programs. The Central Valley Opportunity Center operates numerous employment, education, and economic development programs in Stanislaus County. A lot of people don't even know they exist. It would be great to marry them together with the city, with county dollars. Why not? The county's flush with cash. Marry them together to see what could be done and how it could be done. But to give those homeless men and women and families an opportunity to leverage those opportunities to be trained. Imagine if you went through a housing program, you went through the hard knocks of getting clean, and you're looking for a job. We need to help you find that employment to retrain you. At the same time, we need to focus on childcare. One thing to feed a child, it's another thing to get them in school, it's another thing to clothe them. But if mom can't find a job because she doesn't have daycare services, it failed. There isn't enough daycare in this community. There isn't enough daycare in Stanislaus County. So along the pendulum in terms of things that we have to do, and as we think about convening these organizations together, working one down the list, checking the box, transparent to the community. Okay, here's what we got done. This first 3 months, here's what's been accomplished, et cetera, et cetera. Child care has to be at the top of the list so that we can help those families. The last issue is really transportation. People living out of their cars, the cost of gasoline, which is going well over $7 a gallon, with at least $1.50 or more of that because of California tax. People are making decisions today. Do I buy a gallon of milk or do I buy a gallon of gasoline? It's a terrible situation to be in. If you're a person living in your car with your family, your same situation, you have the same challenges. How do I feed them? How do I care for them? How do I buy gas? It's not just about a bus pass, it's about a coordinated system where we can make sure they can get from point A to point B. A bus pass, a taxi pass, or whatever can be done are the challenges that we face. When I started this, I talked to you about building a solution. Solutions don't happen overnight. But I'm a guy who likes an enormous challenge. And I wouldn't have come here tonight and say, I'll take on the challenge of convening these organizations together, being able to come back to the community to say, here's what we can do, here's what we cannot do, and why. Because you deserve to understand if it can't be done, why can't it be done? Not political garbage, just truth in advertising, what works, what doesn't work, and why. So I'll leave you with that thought and open it up to whatever questions you might have. But that's the opportunity we face today, and that's the opportunity we face tomorrow. And I believe with the assistance of United Samaritans Foundations feeding more people today than they have before and more people tomorrow, we will find families and individuals better off than they have been in the future. Thank you.
Out on the speaker cards, and there are yellow or yes, they're broad cards. Anyone that wants to speak, please fill out a card and then come up and speak. There are also white cards if you don't want questions.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Yeah, for this situation with the homeless crisis, I've been researching a lot since the first time I went to the first meeting. And now I've been learning about the Finnish model because Finland is doing something to reduce the homelessness in their country. And they provide housing for the homeless. But what they do provide is they give them unconditionally with no strings attached. And also they provide services like what we want to provide, but they provide services ranging from healthcare, jobs, mental health services, detoxing, getting their alcoholism and addiction treated. So I think we might even look at that, but with our own, our own wave, and maybe we can bypass all the federal rulings, unless if they try to find another trick to say that, oh, we can't do that with their legal theories, as the attorney presented, because even if we try to do something like the Finnish model or some other model to provide housing and services to the homeless, the NGOs in Washington, D.C. will always find something to blame us. And also, we need to get the state, county, and federal government to provide more money for housing, for healthcare, for services, because this has been an ongoing issue. We need to get this under control because a lot of people are frustrated. It's costing a lot of money. And most homeless that I've seen, they just want a place to stay. Also, we need to deal with homeless that's been, I've seen a lot with serious mental issues, and they need to get treatment and help. I mean, they have state hospitals for criminals. Why not build a separate state hospital for those who are in dire need of help, especially with severe mental and addiction issues? We could look into that. And for most, I think we can do it, but it's going to take a lot of political will and courage, because it's always going to be an issue. People are going to be complaining. Then you're going to have state and federal courts going to say, "Oh, you can't do this. You can't do that," and that NGO law firm that they want to target cities for ordinance, they're going to find another way with another new legal theory to say that we can't provide anything. So we got to find many ways to combat and do it humanely and efficiently, and getting people the help they need as soon as possible. Thank you.
I'd like to thank all the members of the panel tonight for being here. Certainly eye-opening. Thank you, Jeffrey Lewis. Very impressive. Certainly in support of what you're doing. I too want to be problem-solving, proactive problem-solving. Thank you. I also want to be proactive problem-solving. We are next to the Broadway Park with the RVs. And I think it's important to define the issues and the actors here. I'm certainly compassionate to the plight of the homeless folks. But we also have an issue with vagrants and squatters. And I think it's very important to draw that distinction. Also heard tonight a term, service resistant. And so if you're service resistant, I don't think you really qualify as for all the protections of a homeless individual. You're making a lifestyle choice. Okay, so that really needs to be taken into consideration. We have city ordinances or our laws, okay, that and I'm just going to use one example, and there's a lot of moving parts in this arena. I went to the last meeting, I came to this meeting, and my eyes just continue to be open to the amount of moving parts. But in regards to the RVs parked at Broadway Park, you know, I really feel like we have city ordinances that can resolve that. You know, that really falls into a category of an event. Just because they're playing hopscotch with their RVs back and forth, in my opinion, they're having an event. Okay, they're living there. And so our city ordinances clearly say it requires a permit, it requires insurance, and it requires security. So I think that we're really erring on the side of caution instead of being proactive. I'm not advocating that the city be sued. I would instruct our city manager, or request, I certainly not a council member, but I would suggest that we really look at our city insurance policies, because I think we need to be proactive and brace to be sued if that's what it comes to. Because we need, you know, really, we're going to have to get more proactive. You know, Mr. Lewis indicated we weren't in a crisis right now. I might have to disagree with that. I do disagree with that. So, you know, I came up here prepared to advocate for the city attorney to have additional funding. But I understand that if he needs more funding, he's already been given the free rein to anything he needs, so to speak. So I think we need to dedicate more staff at that level to combat the blue binder. I think we need to go full court press on the blue binder and figure out a way to resolve this and to use the ordinances that we have in place. I'm okay with rewriting ordinances, but we need we're asking for and expect some immediate relief here with this. You know, we have the blue binder that tells us what we can't do. I'd like to see a green binder created for what we can do. So I'm going to also suggest that and agree with Mr. Lewis that we need 40 residents. I think we need 400 if that's what it takes to have the number of beds for these, whether it be a squatter or a vagrant or a homeless person, for those people to go. They need some place to go. And if that has to be city property, let's define where that is. They can't stay at Broadway Park, but they can go to another city property, okay? That's my opinion. I'd like to see legal avenue that supports that. I'd also suggest that that location be at the city waste treatment plant, where there's certainly easy access to sewer, water, power, and garbage across the street. The United Samaritans can feed them right there. I think I'd like to understand more about the number of beds, the number of homeless, how we define those homeless people. And I think that's going to be something we can drill down on to understand where we put these folks and how we house them. And if that's Maricopa County tents, then it's Maricopa County tents for the interim. Oh, I need to speak up?
No, we just want everyone else.
Oh, okay, I'm almost done. So in closing, I believe that this can be solved. The city council, we're really looking at for them to take some action, fund the city attorney or whatever it takes for the city attorney to dedicate the manpower to sort through this, push the boundaries, get creative, and test that blue binder. That's all I have.
Storms?
Hi, my name is Kevin Storms. I first want to really thank the police officers that here. They put their lives on the line every day. And every time I see a police officer, I always like to tell them that, and I appreciate it. I think I have a lot of empathy for the homeless, but we're also forgetting the people here that live in this town. And we giving the homeless all the rights and rules, but the people who live in this town, pay the taxes, cannot use the parks because we have RV vans in front of them. Kids can be abducted. I have a friend who has a business on Main Street. I am a mason on Thor, and every single day there is feces and urine on the door. Where are these people? We're feeding them, but we're not giving them a bathroom. So that is a major issue. I personally would think that around all parks, an idea, I don't know if you guys already discussed this, but around all parks, you have 3-hour parking. At that park, you can park 3 hours, but no longer. We have code enforcement come around, write down their license plate numbers, they're there, they kick them out or give them a ticket. The same goes if the person has a bike tent and big plastic stuff all over it and is living there. The police officers back when I was a boy would come up with their nightstick, hit you on the shin and say, move along. I don't know if that's illegal, but I certainly think that that should be legal. But again, those are just a couple ideas. I don't know if those work. I know that Jessica's house takes care of women. I support that. I am happy to support other avenues with donations. I'm a local real estate agent. I am also a volunteer basketball coach, and I came here right after basketball practice tonight to come to this meeting. So I would love to see a difference, but we can, I don't see it happening. I'm seeing Denair Park. You did a little cleanup, but the very next day they're right back there again. Keep pushing them out every single day. They got to move. The one other question I have is where these people are coming from. I've heard that other counties are getting buses and bringing their homeless population and dropping them off here. I don't think that's appropriate. Thank you very much.
Finding my notes, I got some here. So I'd also like to thank the panel, especially the police officer up here. I'll echo some sentiments that were said a while ago, because the previous speakers, that they do what they can do, but I do know their hands are tied somewhat, and there are certain regulations, laws they can't enforce because they've been really asked not to. But I've got a couple of questions to follow up. I did come to the last meeting, and our city attorney at that point said that, and I'm going to go not word for word here, but down in Merced, visiting that city for whatever reason, you saw one vagrant pushing a cart down the street. But you didn't have time to follow up and find out what Merced was doing to clean it up or not have the vagrant problem that Turlock does. We suggested towns like Ripon, we suggested towns like Danville, further down, Malibu, there's not a vagrant problem there. Carmel does not have a problem. So we're talking about, and one of the mayor's commitments in her campaign back when she was elected was roads and vagrancy was two primary things to tackle. Well, we've done some road things, but I've just seen the vagrant issue get worse. And I made the comment last time as well that I see people getting bussed in. Now, there's people in this room that will disagree with that, but I've talked to many, many vagrants that hang out in Denair Park. And so now in Denair Park, I think the police did a great job in getting them out at night through the eviction process, but guess what they do? They haul all their stuff across the way into a dirt lot, and the next morning, 7 o'clock, they come right back with their stuff again. So we've kind of sort of fixed the problem, not really, we've just moved them about 100 feet. So one of the questions I have is, did we follow up with some of the neighboring cities? You'd have to answer this now to find out what are they doing, because we talked about a plan up here, y'all did, about a plan or somewhat of a plan, and some goals that you have in mind and some unique things to do. But we kind of sound like we're trying to reinvent something that is already out there that we could snipe from somebody else and use. We don't have to start the process all over. We can refine some things other cities are doing, but do we have to start all over from square one and throw more resources, more money at something where you may not have to do that? So that's question one. What is a city ordinance for a vagrant population to take over a park, Denair Park specifically, the ordinance in proximity to a school? So I don't know what the ordinance is. I tried to look it up and I couldn't find it. The ordinance is much too long. I mean, the policies and procedures or the ordinances are way too long for me to read through all that. But there's got to be an ordinance that says there's got to be X amount of feet away. If they meet that standard, let's change the ordinance and make it more. Kids walk by there every day. You have nudity, you have drinking, you have drugs. The park sign says, got all the rules up there. One of them is no drinking, there's no alcohol allowed, no bottles allowed, no animals allowed, but take a walk by there and you'll see all of the above. So we're not enforcing that ordinance as well. So I'd encourage us to take what we said before, take the ordinance we have in the books now that we can enforce and enforce those. But we've got to get that vagrant population away from the kids who walk by there. So again, I echo some sentiments that was said before. Is there's could be child abduction, adult abduction, whatever the case may be. Who knows who's going to get snatched into one of these vans that are parked in one of these parks, and then you get hauled away. So that's a couple things. There was talk last meeting about one of the projects, one of the goals and an action plan was to reunite vagrants with their families. I asked, what's the success rate of that? Are we putting a lot of resources to that? And is that happening? Because if it's not happening, it's happening for one or two reasons. One, they don't want to be reunited, or the family doesn't want them back. So let's move our resources someplace else, because we're just throwing good money after bad, is my opinion. So we got to change that behavior. You know, like a sentiment I said before is that, you know, I've heard way too many times that they're just human beings. And I don't want to be one that's noted as being someone who is heartless, because I'm not. But I'm a human too. But I pay taxes in this town. They don't. So I feel a lot of people in this room, I'll say what I think some are thinking. others I may offend, is that I should come first. I'm paying for the park, not the vagrants. I can't take my grandkids to the park for fear of stepping on a needle, for fear of having to see something they shouldn't see in public, for fear of walking in and stepping in human feces. Can't do that. So I said it before, Turlock used to be known as the gem of the valley. We're not anymore. But we can get back to that. We got to start with some basics, and I appreciate the plan we're trying to put together, but what took so long?
Kid Casey?
Hello again. Hello again. I was at the last meeting. I'm probably just going to be reiterating what the last gentleman said on a few things. I'm representing Cotta's Kitchen. It's our restaurant there, right there across from Dinner Park. Been there for about 10 years. Front row seat to it, as I said last time. When it comes to the homeless essentially using our property as unfortunately, their personal toilet, I'm the one who's cleaning it up. So I have firsthand experience with all of this. And it's frustrating, just to say the least, not to mention a health hazard for a restaurant. So first thing I'd like to know is, and you had mentioned there's a city council member here, where are all the elected officials? You raise your hand if you're a city council member? Okay. Where's the mayor? Where are the people who are?
We told you at the beginning of the meeting, we specifically did not want him to come to influence the deliberations.
I wasn't here at the beginning.
Okay, well,
Okay.
we addressed that at the last meeting too, right?
Yeah, I don't remember that. But to be honest with you, they should be here.
No, we sort of told them not to be here. Councilmember Franco chose to come, but the city manager can repeat what he said at the beginning if he likes.
This is, 84% was the statistic on what people considered the most important problem in Turlock.
Listen, we're here to try to solve problems, and this is like feeling like it's not that. You said the same thing last time, right?
I didn't bring up the officials last time.
Well,
but
somebody did. It was the
Okay.
same issue. It's been addressed.
All right.
So
I'll move on. So the problem with the homeless, I don't think anybody is against helping the people that want to get helped. The problem is with the people that don't want the help. So what do we do about that? We can't just let them sit there and be there. There has to be consequences for not wanting the help. The homeless know your rules. And like the gentleman just said, you kick them out of the park, they move 10 feet away, 15 feet away, they come across our property and park it at the bus stop, and then just move it back to the park. So it's just frustration. Jeffrey, you had mentioned helping the families. I'd like to know what the percentage is of families that are homeless in Turlock, because we have never seen that. And granted, we're not seeing the entire picture in Turlock, but we are seeing Dinner Park. And I have never seen a family of homeless in the park. It's mostly working age men. Okay, well then everybody's a family out there. Most of them are working age men and some are women, but most of them, the problems are with the working age men that are there, that don't want the help, that just want to stay parked there. This was brought up again about going by the school. You talk about endangering children in the shelters. Yeah, we shouldn't do that. We also shouldn't be endangering children that are walking by there. A school that's 100 feet from that, or 100 yards from that park. You got all the kids coming by from high school down there that pass by every day. And like I've said before, and I say it again, it's not just the homeless there. We have personally seen drug deals happening out there. And somebody said, well, why didn't you call the police? We did call the police. So it's not just the homeless issue there. There's a criminal element that shows up there that perpetuates what's happening there. And just as a side note, I say that they know your rules. They also talk with each other and know where to go. I saw, just as on my way here tonight, there was somebody pushing a bike with about 20 feet of stuff, making a beeline. He was on Canal and went down the street directly towards, it wasn't like he was looking around for a place to be. He was going beeline to Denair Park, and that's where he went, and he parked. So my question to you guys, in terms of, it always seems to be about their property when it comes to on public land. Why can't there be a storage facility for them so that they have a place to put their stuff? So you want to be at the park, you want to sit there all day, that's fine. You can't have your stuff there. You can't have a tent, you can't have a train of property, as they call it, there. Is that something that can be done as just as a possible way of at least starting to clean it up?
Yeah, let me know when you're done, and I'll try to address some of it.
And just the last thing, I want to address you, sir, the city attorney, and you talked about it, and you go into it as much tonight. You were certainly more into it the last meeting with regards to the blue binder. We want somebody who's still willing to fight. And if you enforce an ordinance and let these guys do their job, in other words, don't tie their hands, let them do what they need to do, the ordinance. And if you're going to get sued, but fight it, And while you're fighting it, because court cases take forever, these guys can still do their job, and maybe that will help the problem to begin with. And people will start realizing you can't take advantage of the citizens of Turlock this way. So that'll be the last thing I say.
That's a fair point. I think that's a good idea because it reverses the risk issue, right, that I talked about at the beginning. So that's actually a good idea to do a survey of the settlements, right, that communities have faced when they get sued. And then the decision maker, your elected officials, can decide how many millions of dollars it's worth, because that's what it comes down to. Because what you said at the end is absolutely right. It will take a long time to get there, and
right.
And all of that, and it'll have a price tag at the end of the day. If you don't do it smartly, right, you can minimize the risk. And so let me. Were you finished? I didn't want.
Yeah,
to
I'm done. Thank you.
So let me. They're always good. Okay, do that. Oh, okay. So the ideas are all good. Most of them we have in the hopper, and they're trying to, figure out how to implement and all of that. Not all of them, so that's why these meetings are good. So the challenge becomes like I said, there are two factors here. There's the law, your local law, right, that we talked about, and the two meetings have focused on the local law and the ordinances. I understand that because you're all law-abiding, tax-paying, hard-working people who just don't want the effects of this, right? I'm the same way where I live. Completely understood. So, but that is only, it might not even be 50% of the equation, because you can have the most perfect laws on the books, and if the facts on the ground don't convince the federal judge that you're in a place where you're allowed to enforce those perfect local laws, it doesn't matter, because you'll still get popped, or sued, and you'll have to settle for a lot of money. So let me speak to what we saw in Merced, because somebody made that good point that I did say that we saw a facility in Merced. So it's an old lawyer trick, right? When the law's not on your side, argue the facts. So I'm going to argue the facts now, because when I came here last year, the challenge was the essential holding of the Boise case is you can't enforce anything unless you have a shelter bed for everybody who's homeless. And as I said, the court didn't stop there. There are all these factors. If you look at how the shelter operates, or if it's Christian-based and this or that, the next federal court is going to say, you don't have 200 beds, you only have 80 beds, right? You could just see the way the thinking of these people. It's a little bit, I find it disingenuous. I find it unfair to local communities. But that's what it is. So what the facility that at least I saw in Merced was great for me to see, because a lot of the enforcement issues I believe exist in Turlock were eliminated by that low barrier shelter. I forget the name. I think they call it a navigation center or something. Because a lot of the legal issues that were suggested in the Boise case of what the next series of lawsuits are going to be were addressed by the way that shelter operated. Pets could be allowed on site. They stored the property there at the shelter. For people in Turlock, the shelter was open all day. So they didn't have rules that you had to leave in the morning and come back in the evening. So we walked in the shelter at 11 in the morning, and I don't know, there were probably 50 homeless people there in the shelter, because they had sort of created a sense of community, and the county services were there. And so, for a city attorney, it was great. I mean, I looked at that and I said, well, that takes care of most of my concerns. You still have to do the right numbers and, have a good faith effort to, make sure you have enough beds under Boise. But a shelter that operated in that fashion really helps that community. So that's why when we went to lunch, we saw one person with a shopping cart that day in downtown. I don't know, maybe they just did it for our benefit, knowing we were going to be in Merced that day, but it looked real. And it just, I mean, if you're a downtown business owner in Turlock, it would kind of make perfect sense. I think if you walked into that Merced shelter in the middle of the day and you saw dozens and dozens of people there in the middle of the day, not out and about, but being in a place where their services are provided to the people who want to be helped to turn their lives around, and they're not causing this community impact and the impact on taxpayers and property owners. So that, to me, that's part of it, right? And I think Mr. Lewis's idea on convening all the stakeholders probably gets in that direction and helps with that. So, I'll stop there. I'm going to be a little bit. I don't want to say all the legal theories and stuff, because again, then you just become a target for the people that don't want you to have any ability to deal with this problem at all. But I would say the sessions have been great. For me, the ordinances need some work. I've talked to the chief. We're gonna ramp up the enforcement of the ones that clearly can be enforced or have the lowest risk of being sued on, and we're gonna work on the rest. But the other thing that's the legal part, but the facts on the ground probably have to improve in Turlock also, because I think everybody, at least I think the council and everybody up here, the Turlock being the jewel of the valley is a great goal, and I think we heard it last time, and I think it's something we all that's the goal.
I wanted to clarify the issue as it relates to why elected officials haven't been here unless they chose to. How about now? Okay, thank you. I wanted to clarify the issue about attendance at these meetings by elected officials. I'm the one who set up these meetings, not the elected officials, in response to meetings at the city council. I wanted these meetings for us to get out and hear what you had to say, to hear what we're dealing with, so that you're better informed. These are community forums. So I apologize if there's any confusion about why the elected officials weren't here. It's about you, and it's about us telling you what's going on in the city at the moment. The city council will get a full report from both of these meetings with suggestions, with recommendations, and forms of action to be taken in the future. Well, probably not going to get it done tomorrow, but I would But no, I would think within the next 2 months, we should have all this wrapped up and in front of the city council. Yes. Absolutely.
Now? Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Julie Foxx. I see some friends, and I know you're my neighbors, and I just wanted to share that I've been working with the homeless for 21 years. I also ran a homeless resource center. The biggest, and you're right, and I don't disagree with anyone that's had to pick up excrement. It's a horrible thing to have to do. I've done it myself. But what I will tell you is many, many, many of these people have severe mental health issues. And the only way that that is going to be stopped is by having a mental health facility that takes these people in. Many will never live on their own. They will never be able to find a job. And we need to have a place. You know, we closed the mental institutions, and that probably wasn't a good idea. And so if we can get the mentally ill in the mix, and we have no place, despite whatever song and dance and ponies that were brought out here tonight, there's no place large enough to help these men and women. And I resent this happening before an election. I resent that you continue to speak when it's your turn to listen to the community. I actually care about these people, and about my community. So if you could let the people speak and you could comment afterwards, it was supposed to go an hour. It's way over that. There's a bill that just got passed in the government, and many people are against it. I am not. It is a bill that allows addicts to be forced into mental health facilities until a psychiatrist and a physician believe that they are healthy enough to live on their own. The ACLU said it went against personal freedom. I understand that, but I can't stand watching them suffer out in the cold and the wet. And Mr. Petrolakis, I think you mentioned that there's a law against making a homeless person in a tent in the rain not vacate that tent. And if you think that they should be forced to sit out in the elements, sir, I feel sorry for your soul. So that's all I have to say. Well, whatever. I heard him bring it up. And I heard, and I'm not deaf, that if it was raining, we were unable to move them, as if that was a bad thing. I'm sorry, I don't think any human should be forced to be in the elements, ever. Please don't, not anymore. Whatever you say I agree with, just stop talking.
I didn't really have a position on it. I was just pointing out that the case law said that.
Hi. So thank you for putting this together and providing the information to the public. It was said during this meeting that we want to help the people that want help. I'm assuming the we is the city staff of Turlock and the city council, although I'm not quite sure. But we know from the cleanup that the people that don't want help, what about them? Because, and I know somebody else brought this up, so it's a little redundant, but we know from the cleanup that that's 96% of the people. because it was over and over again, we heard how few people accepted the help, even though they were offered it for 3 weeks. So my question is what about the people that don't want help? Do we just allow them to continue breaking the laws? And I'm not so sure about that. That wouldn't be what I would agree with, but that is something that I have a question about. And then, I heard Mr. Lewis, I heard you talk about, free food and free clothes and free daycare and free medical, free transportation and free housing, and that this is what they deserve. But what I didn't hear was accountability. I didn't hear having people work for their services, work for your food. And so, there's the people in Turlock that they go to work and they pay their taxes and they actually provide their own housing and their own food and their own clothing and their own daycare and their own things. And I'm thinking that if we provide everything without any accountability, without any requests to work, why would anybody want to get out of, people that want to do that, they wouldn't ever want to get out. Why get out? See, I got a house and I got clothes brought to me and somebody else does my laundry and somebody else cooks and somebody else cleans and somebody else does all these things. So I would like to see the solution include that you have to be respectful, you have to want help, you have to be accountable, and you have to work for the services that are provided to you. So that's my thoughts. Thanks.
Bridegroom?
Okay, number one, thank you to all of you for your presentation, especially Mr. Lewis with the ideas that you showed. Yes, previous speaker mentioned the care court, which I also support, and Stanislaus County is supposed to have that implemented by October of next year. So if we can get some support or at least some thoughts from city staff, and if they feel it's good, get some support from council members, city managers, so on and so forth. Okay, accountability. I think accountability is very big. I wanted to scream, yes, finally, when Jeffrey Lewis was doing some of his presentations. We need accountability. I've been asking for accountability for a long time at city council meetings. I'll give you one example, $580,000 that the city, federal or state funds that the city directed to Turlock Gospel Mission and We Care, and they were for, this was in December of 2019. I don't remember the exact purposes, but if I remember correctly, the money wasn't used for the purposes that the city council said it was going to be used for. Okay, and then $140K of that was set aside. First, it was proposed for a ridiculous idea of trying to partly refurbish 140 South First Street, which is a building that the city owns, which is in horribly decrepit shape, that would be used for the storage of the possessions of the homeless. I said that right? Okay. There were a lot of objections to that. There were ideas. For example, there were ideas given about using shipping containers or tough sheds, putting them on the property right next to Turlock Gospel Mission. The director of housing services said, oh, you can't do that. That's against city ordinances. Just poo-pooed every idea that the public gave. A month or two later, I drove by, and lo and behold, what did I see on the lot right next to Turlock Gospel Mission? A couple of storage containers that they were using for storage of the possessions of the homeless. okay? I'm just going to say this. Housing staff has not been transparent. They've been a black hole. You can't get information out of them. There's no accountability. We give hundreds of thousands of dollars to all these different organizations, including for transitional housing to Family Promise and other places like that. And what are the results? Who are we helping? Are we helping Turlock residents? Or what's going on? We get nothing. We get no feedback. You've heard about the military industrial complex. Well, I believe in a sense we have a homeless industrial complex here involving city staff and the service providers, okay? I know that's a very nasty thing to say, and it's probably not true for everyone involved, but there really does seem to be, again, when they have public hearings about how to spend millions of dollars, it's buried in the city website. You have to know about it to even know when the meeting is going to be held. They come to the city council with their plan that has to be approved that night, or else we lose millions of dollars. So there's no opportunity for the council members or the public to be able to make comments and to have changes. It's all determined by city staff and the service providers or the so-called nonprofits that they're working with. There's no input or whatever. And as you can tell by what I've said, I've been saying this privately and to council members and to some city staff, but now I've finally got frustrated enough to say it publicly. I'm sure my 3 minutes are probably up. In terms of homeless families, yes, I think that is important. I remember, oh, okay, thank you. I remember on Turlock Police Scanner, there was a lady who had a family, was living in the encampment there by Burger King. And I asked her, we have Turlock Gospel Mission. You can go there. They will, have for families. And she said, well, we went there, but they didn't like it because, again, this is just one side of the story, okay? Just one side. She said that there were little boys climbing into bed with her daughter, and they didn't feel comfortable. They didn't feel safe. So they actually felt more safe on the street than what they did at the mission. And it made me very sorry. So thank you.
First, I want to say thank you, like many of us, to our police officers. And if you believe in God, keep them in your prayers, because I think you have a very difficult job these days. I think our fire department has an extremely difficult job. And I thank you, Officer Rodriguez. You go out, and then it's almost the definition of insanity. You're doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. But what you get is the return of the homeless. And I am sorry that I have to call you so frequently. But I would also like to talk about the homeless database that Mr. Lewis mentioned. I think that's a great idea. I don't think it's a great idea for Turlock. I truly believe that this should be initiated at the county level, and then the county can disseminate that information to the cities. I feel the county is dumping on the cities and destroying our communities. And they have the money, and they should be held accountable for what they're doing to our community. It's not Turlock's problem. I mean, it is our problem, but the county should be stepping up. And I apologize, I'm going to talk about the rain because I'm the one that called when it was raining. I go to Denier Park, I see they don't have the tents are up, and it's just drizzling. We're not Seattle, and I know they need a place to go, but who says that we have to have all the beds in Turlock? Where does it say in the Boise law that we have to have the low barrier in Turlock? I know Malibu, they're doing it 20 miles outside of Malibu. I think we need to take care of our homeless. I really feel like that is something important to do, but not at the expense of destroying our community. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dennis Grasspointer. I wanted to thank you all on the panel for coming out again and taking our comments. And what I'm hearing, and this is my second time now, is the public is really on edge. I don't understand the limitations. You know, I run my own business and I'm constantly worried about getting sued. I fully embrace that knowledge. But I'm always looking for ways to get around what's happening to me. And I don't know, can't speak for anybody. I'm not in the meetings with the city manager or the lawyers or the council leadership, but I would hope that you would be working very aggressively, connected to each other, to deploy plans that empower us as citizens to do more to meet our safety, our health needs, and what we think is a respectful living place. And if I can feel as a citizen that the power of the brains that work for our city, lead our city, are doing that, then I think I would feel good. I've listened now twice, and I think sometimes we're functioning from a position of defense and not offense. And I think the public is asking for some offense. And I know all the ridiculous laws, and I listen to your the facts about all the groups that are supporting the legal entities to drive this down on us. But we've just got to keep returning the pressure in a way that we can. To the people that work with the homeless, I take my hat off to you, because I'm in a defensive position and it's very tough to put up with angry men. I get a few women that push the rules and they do some odd things, but there's a small segment of that population that is the biggest driver of the conflicts, the problems, and the rule breakers. I want to see us help the people that need help, don't know they need help, and the families. I support battered women and some other things through my business, but we need to get the lawbreakers away. I've been intimidated, I've been hit, my employees have been hit. It's not good. Now, the last 6 months, I will tell you, Chief, it's gotten better. We're getting some responses. I've tried to get my employees to understand, please call the police. Well, they won't come. No, you don't know that. So I demonstrated that, and one of your officers came out and took care of a person that was out of control. But the public has to work with all of you. And I don't know if there's a forum for that, because I'm not sure how the public interaction is in the plan that you're going to bring forward. So if the city manager says there's going to be a plan that's going to be presented, I think it's right for us to ask, is that a solid plan? And I'm a business person and I want accountability for the plan. If I give you money and you're within my organization, I want the results from that money. So often money is given to public agencies, service providers, and it's, you read about it in the news, you hear about it on the internet, it's been wasted. Somebody built a big mansion, took a big trip, where did the money go? Or somebody within the organization pointed that money to somebody they knew or some pet project they wanted. And Mr. Lewis, if you're going to get this job to represent our taxes and our money and all the charities that benefit your organization, you've got to know at the bottom line where this money is going. Because a public, we have great people that give their time to run our cities, and yeah, maybe I don't think that the public officials or the mayors and council members had to be here tonight, but they're under a lot of pressure. And they're going to look for people like you to bring solutions. You have to have your own level of accountability, because we don't have the time to run the numbers on your accountability. And that, I think, is part of this is the manager's job, to make sure that that is being accounted for in a fair and honest way. And we need to completely support our police. But I don't know as the public what I should say, what I should do to help the officers have the most ability to take care of the problem. When you're a young manager working for me, or you're a young business person, you don't know what to say when you call the police. You don't know what to tell them. You want to get this person away from you as fast as you can. And without proper information, sometimes the law officers' hands are tied. That's why I went, and I've done it myself. I've had to spend thousands of dollars to stop people from doing drugs in my business, defecating on my business. And it's sad to hear that panhandling is okay because of our constitutional right for free speech, because it is the number one driver of empowering the people that get drugs. We all think they're panhandling for money to get food. That's not what they're doing. It's amazing to me how many times they're shooting up in bathrooms, or they've got drugs, they've got cell phones, and other things, because well-intended public people, our community, give them money, and it's going the wrong place, and we really want to do something right. So first of all, thanks for the police, and thank you for what you've been doing. So I notice it, okay? So keep the ball rolling. Thank you.
My name is Terry Aka. I have worked for Turlock Unified School District 29 years. I just retired. And kids are my passion. And when I go near and I walk by, I'm with a group, we clean up in the morning downtown and all around Crane Park. When I walk by there and I see nude women, I see men, everybody's drunk, junk is everywhere, needles, we found bags of marijuana, we find all this stuff right by a school. And I know that was said earlier, but coming from a health technician, that health is my business, it's got to stop. It has to stop. What happened to blood-borne pathogens? Fecal matter that causes all these diseases that we can get from blood and everything. It's just out there. I have cleaned up entryway after entryway of fecal matter in the downtown on Main Street. And if you go and you get something, you're going to be sick. And so we're making the problem worse. So in my belief, I believe that we help, like you said, we help the people that want to be helped. But 96% of the people at Danair Park and over at Broadway, those people, they're humans. I'm a human too. Those people don't want help. My sister is one of those people. She doesn't want help. We tried for 40 years. We finally had to say, we took her to a graveyard and said, what do you want on your gravestone? Because the way you're living. And she got mad. My mom got her out. We put her in rehab. She got out. Anyway, long story short, I know my 3 minutes, but I just feel that kids are my passion. We've got to do something about the parks. We have to take them back. Now, this is coming from a woman on Sunset Strip, that I held a bat and watched a basket of crap for a homeless person so she could go in and shampoo her hair. And my husband walks up and goes, "What the heck are you doing?" And she came out just gonna kill him because I feel compassionate for people that need help, that want help, and there's a difference. There's a difference. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Zach Vera. I work with Intake at a program. First off, I just want to say that I'm sorry. I hear a lot of disgruntled, residents and citizens like yourselves. It's pretty eye-opening. I do work with the homeless as well with a program called Adult and Teen Challenge, and we're out on Faith Home Road, just on the other side of 99. And I myself work with Intake, so there's not much that I'm doing. I hear you guys, and I used to live on that side of that. Used to be my story. Was I was out there. I wasn't totally homeless. I was kind of living in and out of a car. I had a place to go when I wanted to get shelter, but it's been about 4 years, and I've been clean, and praise God. But there is hope for people who do want the help, and that's what my organization is here for. If you guys heard about us, we've been in the area for about 30 years, and we do help men 18 and over to try to get help and restoration. I have seen it, and it's a great thing, what God can do in people's lives. It may seem like there's no hope from your point of view, but just to let you guys know, me and my group are trying to combat some of that, the real pandemic. It's homelessness here, at least in this state. I mean, people come from all over the country to California, especially because the weather, and I mean, there's lots of things, and so I am at the forefront. I see it, and unfortunately, we get guys that come in and then they go right back out, and but we try to keep them in, and we are faith-based. It's a Christian discipleship, we call it, and it's a year 14 to 16 month program. So we keep them in there, and we house them, and we feed them. We do their laundry for them. I mean, they go there to get rest, and it's helped me. But a lot of the times, these guys don't want the help, and it's a shame. Like the miss that was here earlier, a lot of them have a lot of mental health issues, and it is a good idea maybe to start opening those facilities back up for them, because it's mental health is a big issue these days too, but also so is addiction, drug addiction, alcoholism. I'm probably just a little guy on the on the stage, but I am trying. We are trying, and I have business cards if you guys would like one, and if you see anybody that might need help, you're welcome to give them my card or call me, and leave me a message, and I could get back to you guys as soon as I can. Our facility can facilitate about up to 40 men at a time at any given time. Right now, we only have about 15 guys. So we're always looking for men to help, that want the help. We have our youngest right now is 20 years old, and our oldest is 69. So we've had men in their 70s come and get help. We're not a rehab facility, but we do touch on we do have a lot of curriculum that focuses on why they do the things they do, or why, when it started or how it started, and it just really digs deep. So, I mean, it's a great place. Like I said, we're called Faith Home Adult and Teen Challenge, and that's just right out on the other side of 99 on Faith Home Road. Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Right, it goes to the ministry, correct. Helps feed them and... Right. Yeah, so if you guys have any questions, I'll be around, business cards and all that too, and we can exchange information.
I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. I've learned a lot, and I've been through this twice now, and I keep learning, so thank you for keeping my education going. We are going to present programs to the council for their consideration, and it'll probably take us a couple of months to get it all pulled together. There are some tough challenges, starting like where, okay, low barrier, long-term transitional housing, there's got to be a location for that. Now, I know that there's going to be a lot of people who say we need it, but they don't want it near them. So that's going to be tough choices that are going to have to be made. Dr. Lewis, or Jeffrey, I want to thank you very much for your presentation tonight. It was full of great ideas and things we're going to follow up on as well. So again, thank you all for being here, and please drive home safe.